Greetings, traveler. What gives someone the license or the permission to be able to do game design? What makes someone capable, or what proves of them having the skill to be able to go in and make a game fun? This is a question that has been in my mind for basically decades now. And today what I want to do is describe my journey through this question and through this process, and hopefully give an insight to what I think the answer is. My name is Xanthos. I've been working in the games industry for over 14 years now, and I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons for about 30 years now. And both of these tasks very much involve designing a game, designing an adventure, a story, things for the players to do, and so on. But back at the beginning of my career as a game developer, game designer, I would often come across people who were not in the game design team. They would be engineers or artists or something, and they would see the design choices in games, and they would talk between themselves and ask, this idea is horrible, who made that person a game designer, or who approved this idea, and so on. So me as well, before I worked as a game designer, I was working as a tester and an engineer, so it was very easy for me to hear these conversations. I've had this question myself about the choices made in this or that project that I worked on. So that really got me thinking, what makes someone capable of being a game designer, right? So engineers have their engineering tests, artists have their portfolio, which are very visual. Back in the day, game designers didn't really have a test as such. You could design some small brief for a game or a feature of a game, but whether somebody would like that or not would be very subjective. So the more I thought about it, the more I thought, well, what makes a game designer great? And I would think about all the famous people who have made very, very famous games. And no matter how much I tried to look into their design process, I could never find a process. It would always seem like things happen and lots of things are getting tested, and at some point the game has to be out, and when it's out, sometimes it's good. And I thought, well, there certainly doesn't seem to be a process around this, and there certainly don't seem to be many people involved in judging the quality of the product. It's usually just a subset of people working in the company that makes the game. So what's so special about those people? And then I saw all these legendary Japanese game designers with this very mysterious process, and I thought, well, look at them. They look so glamorous. They look so cool. I guess, how do they make games, right? Do they drink a lot of alcohol and come up with these crazy ideas, or they do a lot of drugs and come up with this amazing concept that nobody could think of? That's not the case. I don't think that's the process. I think through my experience and through watching a lot of game designers and game directors break down what they did to make their games in talks like the ones in GDC or available in other places, the more I looked into their process, not that this is a recipe for success for them, because I don't think there is any public material for any recipe for success for video games. The only thing that people who really spoke about the details of their games, successful games, that's why they were invited to give a talk about it, the more I realized that making a game is really not about the idea. Because if it's ideas, everybody has ideas for a cool game. Absolutely every person I've talked to who has ever played a game, even people who have never played video games, still have ideas for what would be a cool video game. So the old saying of, making something is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration, I think definitely applies here. So going back to the question of what gives someone permission or a license to do game design, after watching all these GDC talks, one thing I realized is that, and I mean a lot, I watched more than 300 talks on this topic. What I realized is that even if there's someone who has made a successful game before, even a game so successful that most people know the name of, when they approach a new project, they approach it basically as a new piece of work, right? So there's very little from their experience they can carry over. It's not like, let's say, somebody was a barista in a successful coffee shop, so they take their skills of making coffee to the new coffee shop where they work at, and so they can make good coffee there as well. It's very much not like that. All the ideas and all the experience and the frameworks are good, but they're all in the background. The task at hand of designing a game, actually, from my experience and from what I've heard everybody else talk about, is much closer to designing something like a chair or a table or a lighter or any of these everyday objects. So where's the common point in all these things? The only common point I could find is that, well, just like, there's already chairs in the world, so why would you start designing a new one? The answer is because you want some features that the existing chairs don't have, or that you have some need for a chair that's not fulfilled right now. And so to fulfill that need, somebody sits down and designs a chair anew, maybe with new materials, maybe with a new shape, and so on. So it's similar for games. Perhaps we want to create a game that's similar to another successful game out there, but for IP reasons or license reasons or whatnot, we cannot use it as it is. We have to use basically that idea, that template, and create a new game out of that. Or there's good games out there, but they perhaps lack some feature or something that we really like. So that gives us the motivation to sit down and make one of these ourselves. And I think that's where the 1% inspiration stops and the perspiration begins, in that sense. So from that point on, there isn't really much in terms of genius or super clever ideas or being an extremely intelligent person and so on. I don't think it's that much about that. From what I observed, it's quite simply a process of looking at what the team has made so far, what the prototype looks like, what the design documents look like, and simply taking the next step. So if the game is not complete, work towards completing it. If a feature is not complete, do the same. If something doesn't behave in the game as it should, simply sit down and fix it. If a feature is complete and it's complete exactly according to spec, it has been implemented exactly according to spec, it could still be not fun, or it can be not functional in some key ways that the team just didn't know about before until testing it. So here it's very much not about some crazy inspiration. It's very much about identifying those design issues as we find them in the game and making them into a list, prioritizing the list into what's most important, and only working on that one most important thing that we find until it's resolved. And then we can move to the next one. And if there's nothing else to move to, we can re-examine the game for flaws like that. And that process never really stops. It happens, of course, before release a lot, and it will happen very much after release, because many people will get to play the game and they will all have opinions about what should be fixed, what's good, what's bad about the game. Unfortunately, that's not getting listened to enough, I think, due to time constraints and I suppose business philosophies of various companies. But that in itself is an opportunity for game designers to make the game even better. And from a business perspective, many companies are against that, right? They think, well, why would we waste more money and more time and more human capital to gain not much in terms of money, while making another expansion for the game, or making more gacha for the game, or making another game has the potential of generating more money. Well, from what I've seen, there is a benefit to continuously working on the game until it's really, really good, and until there's really not many major things we could fix, unless it's with another expansion or something big like that. Because imagine if a book out there would get edited over and over and over again until it's as good as it can be, right? It would be of very high quality forever, basically. Same for movies, although that doesn't happen to movies either. Once they're released, nobody touches them again. They would rather start over on a new movie, which I think is a shame, because so many movies need, just a few touches here and there to become truly timeless. In games, we are extremely lucky. I think probably as lucky as in books, because there's that culture of continuous review and update and iteration. And contrary to perhaps other mediums, games are really appreciated when they are improved over time. In fact, when players see that their feedback in the game gets, first of all, heard and acknowledged and then implemented, that just gives people more of an incentive to play again and see if the changes behave as they're supposed to. And if players find another issue, they can report that and they can expect another behavior like that. So here you might be asking, but isn't the company losing money by spending more time and spending more development resources on these games? No, not really. It only wastes time if the company never does anything with these improvements. The way this generates money for the company is in two ways, right? One is for the existing game, because it becomes better and better and better, and because the audience that stays with the game and reports these issues and sees them improved, they have something positive to say about the game. They can say at least that this game is not like all the others. It's not a game that's just released and then abandoned with all its issues. It's something that's being loved by the developers, and they're all the more willing to recommend it to their friends. So that's a potential for sales. And even beyond that, the other part is all this know-how that the team has accumulated is really precious, and I think it's underappreciated in the games industry. So all the people who worked on this game for so long now know so much about it, right? They know about the code base, they know about the general feeling of the game, what most people enjoy about the game. So if someone was to make an expansion or a second or a third game in the series, who better to do that? And you may be thinking now, well, yeah, of course, doesn't everybody do that? Unfortunately, almost no company does this. So for most games that are what we call premium games, so you have to purchase the game to play it, so many console games and PC games and so on, the typical cycle is that there's a few people who work in the company and they create the prototype, and then when the company decides to go into production for this game, many people are hired, external studios are used as well, the game is completed, and then all these resources that were gathered to complete the game from production until release are let go, unfortunately, unless the company has some other task for them, right? But since the game is complete, the company doesn't see a reason to keep all this staff on board. So that may be a normal part of business, but it's definitely a place where all the know-how that was accumulated during the development unfortunately evaporates, and I think that's a huge waste. So anyway, this is just to say that this process of looking at the game and iterating over and over and over the specific parts that seem to be problematic is very much a core function of the game designer. And to answer the question, what gives somebody a license to be a game designer, what separates one from one who isn't, I think it's simply the will to stick with that process and keep repeating it over and over and over again. And once you do so, it is impossible not to improve the game. So what's different between someone who does that and someone who doesn't? It's simply that. It's simply that will. Because I think that if anybody were to do that process seriously, even if they have zero previous experience with game design, can start going down that path. And something that changed my mind during this process and during this research is that there really isn't some genius out there who just knows how to do game design and anything they touch turns to gold. even that person, if that magical person exists, still has to sit down and look at the game objectively and start adding more content, correcting bugs, rebalancing, checking, adding more features, iterating, and so on. So you probably have heard that when you look at top sports people, basketball players and soccer players and so on, if you analyze every second of their performance, it doesn't seem extraordinary. They run and they jump and they shoot the ball and all that stuff just like everybody else. It's that for every little movement that they make, they have worked on that particular thing to make it as good as they can make it. So their shots are very much trained to be on target as much as possible. Their running is trained to be fast as it needs to be for the sport, and so on. So there's nothing extraordinary about somebody running. It's not that some people fly while others have to run. Everybody does the same movements. It's that they consistently look at their motions and they look at their performance, and they always ask the question, well, if we were to just focus on one thing, what would be the one thing that would give us the best return for the effort we put into it? If we were to train, let's say 1 week or 1 month or something on one feature of our performance, what would that feature be? From all our 10 choices, which is the one that will give us the best return? So it is exactly the same in game design, and in my experience, anybody who is willing to take that process seriously, simply look at the flaws and start solving them one by one in a very normal, down-to-earth design way, just like you would fix a chair whose legs are uneven or something. You would just have to test it, sit on it, and then adjust and sit on it again to test it. It is simply that process. I think if you love games enough to do that, I think that's all the permission you need. Anyway, these are my thoughts. This is basically exactly the same process that we're using in the video game that we're developing right now. So I'm not a genius. I'm just a normal dude. I just like it enough to be doing it. If you'd like to know more about it, I'll be happy to share more about the process. There's a link down below. Anyway, thank you so much for your attention. I hope this gives you a little bit of insight into the inner workings of design and what is this skill that we call design exactly. And I hope it at least helps one other traveler out there to see that there's really no genius and no magical energy involved in this. There's just the love of what we do and just simply taking it one step at a time. Anyway, as always, thank you so much for your time, and have fun.